Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fighting Illicit Trade by Promoting the Blue Economy in the Age of Sustainability webinar, co-organized by the OISTE Foundation and the Zermatt Summit. As you know, we have been organizing in cooperation with the Zermatt Summit several of those webinars covering the subject of illicit trade from different angles: illicit trade in terms of technology implication, illicit trade in terms of economy and e-commerce platforms. And today we are being covering illicit trade in relation to the sustainability world. What is the consequences of illicit trade in terms of sustainability and the blue economy? And we have the honor and pleasure to have a very distinguished panel with us, with experts in each of those subjects. Some of them, they have participated in previous webinars organized by OISTE and the Zermatt Summit. As you know, Zermatt Summit organizes a physical in-presence meeting every year. Obviously, with the COVID situation, and especially in Switzerland, this is not possible. So those webinars, it is a way for us to get connected and be together and continue executing on the projects that they were launched last year and before in Zermatt. One of them was the Illicit Trade Declaration, which was initialized by OISTE and the Zermatt Summit and co-signed by different organizations, including PMI, which is today with us represented in this panel. And the idea today is to expand this cooperation, obviously, to many other parties involved in our work, and to, with the help of the participants and also the panelists, reach out as many people as possible, as we believe this is a fundamental activity that needs to be taken seriously into consideration, as illicit trade is $1 trillion problem that needs a multi-stakeholder approach in order to be solved. So we have the pleasure to have with me Daniela Fernandez. She's the founder and CEO of the Sustainable Ocean Alliance. With her, we have Christopher Wasserman, that you know already as a president of the Zermatt Summit Foundation. Also another very well-known person in the sector, Alvise Giustiniani, Vice President of Illicit Trade Prevention of Philip Morris International. So he has the multinational perspective. We have a person that doesn't need introduction, Gunter Pauli, Director of ZERI, and initiator of the blue economic concept. He's the father of the circular economy and one of the most respected person in the world in that subject. And then we have one of the top world experts in illicit trade, David Luna, President and CEO of the Luna Global Networks and Convergence Strategy, LLC. So first of all, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this webinar. We're going to make it in a very interactive way, as we normally do in events in Davos, where we are having thought leader discussions on subjects. So we're going to make it very alive. Participants into the webinar have the option to send us questions through the Zoom Q&A facility. Those questions will reach us. I will be addressing some of the questions to the panel. Others will be directly answered by the panelists if they wish to interact to that question. So maybe let's start on the what I would say the consequences of illicit trade in sustainability, which is the damages and this is creating to the ecosystem. And oceans is obviously a very important part of the ecosystem, because we breathe with oceans, we exist through our oceans, and ocean is part of our life. So Daniela, maybe you can give us a view on what are you doing, who you are in terms of that sustainability effort that you're making, and what your organization is doing. And maybe just start to define some areas where you think illicit trade can be contained in order not to further aggravate the sustainability issue. I give you the floor. As I say, let's make it interactive, 2-3 minutes per participant, and then we will continue speaking among ourselves. Daniela, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carlos. Happy to be here. Happy to be here with everyone. Just to give you some background, I founded Sustainable Ocean Alliance, which is a global nonprofit, because I saw there being a major gap in the activation of young people globally. Oftentimes, you are surrounded in these high-level discussions with experts and scientists and diplomats and heads of state. but the information isn't going outside of those doors. So that's why I built the organization, to give young people a seat at the table and also give them the resources, the funding, the mentorship they need to be successful in bringing their own ideas to life. And through that, we are also supporting the development of ocean technology startups and supporting their growth and advancement. And so, I'd like to take a step back and understand a little bit of how much we have transitioned in the ocean space. When you look at it, it's 100-year-old industry or more. And in the past, the ocean was only thought about in terms of exploitation or exploration. Those were the main uses of the ocean. And so now we're entering a very exciting time frame and phase, in that we're thinking about the regeneration of our ocean. And so there's so much opportunity for disruption here. And as it relates to illicit trade, we as a new generation value transparency, value the importance of measuring impact, and also holding corporations accountable. So I think there's a lot to be said around these values that the next generation is holding, and how they're being translated into building new ocean tech startups and opportunities. So I'll leave it at that and can go further into it down the line.
Very good. I'll come back to you later on the collaborative effort that you do in terms to engage with young people around the world. So Gunter, I mean, you have been doing this for so many years, and you are really a thought leader on the subject. We consider you the Steve Jobs of the circular economy. And where are we really in the progress of that? Is that something that from the last years you have seen any progress in terms of multinationals and governments to apply those principles, or you think something needs to be done still? And what is the COVID situation? Is that COVID going to be an accelerator, or you think COVID is to the contrary, it's going to slow down the process?
Well, thank you, Carlos, first of all, for having me. It's very much appreciated. And let's be very blunt. At least a year ago, we still had the politicians providing lip service to the issue. They're not even providing lip service anymore. I mean, the reports, if you look at all the reports that are being published, they're showing that the situation gets worse and worse and worse. And it is a hard fact that nothing is being done, absolutely nothing. And it's perhaps good that even the lip service was dropped, because now, just like we've heard, from Daniela, young people get up and say, I want to do something, I can't stand it anymore. And this is what we're in need of. There is a need for a groundswell of young people who are standing up and saying, I'm fed up. Yeah, that's a good idea to say that you're fed up, and maybe you want to protest. That's perhaps also a good idea. But hey, only by being fed up and protesting, you're not making any difference. And I think this is really where we need to have a wake-up call. If we are hoping the politicians are going to give the kickstart and are going to move into a high gear so that multinational corporations feel that it's a necessity to do it now and the time is right to do it, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen because a new generation is making it very clear that a different approach is necessary. I give just one small anecdotal example. My book, The Blue Economy, is in 51 languages. And it is recommended in just about no university in Europe. Just about no university recommends it as reader. If you go to Latin America, 80% of the universities recommend it as reading material, 80%. So what has happened? Well, professors in Latin America tend to be a bit younger and a bit more ambitious and searching for more creative and innovative approaches, whereas the academia in Europe are much more conservative and are not embracing out-of-the-box ideas as being the ones that should be promoted. And if they're not coming from Harvard or from Stanford, then we should definitely not look at it too closely. So I think we're going through a fascinating experience where a growing number of young people are clearly keen to become the entrepreneurs, even to the point of saying we're not going to wait for the politicians to move. We're just going to move. And that is the most encouraging thing that I see happening the last 9-12 months.
Totally. Thank you, Gunter. I really believe, and this is the hope of everybody, right? And this new generation is grasping the issues much faster and earlier than we did in our generation. And they have the tools, they have the technology, they have all the tools that they could be used in a very efficient way if there's a strategy behind that. And maybe we can discuss later about technology as well with David. But before that, Christopher, you have been very active in the last years in showcasing good practices and showcasing groups that they come into your events and show concrete solutions. Can you highlight that work and what are the success stories that you think we should all know about it?
Thank you, Carlos. So the Zermatt Summit is a foundation based in Switzerland, and it was launched in 2010 after the financial crisis in those days, where we were thinking that, as you know, the economic model right now doesn't seem to work anymore. There's no growth. There's a lot of externalities. There is financial speculation, et cetera, et cetera. And so we were hoping that in 2010 there would be, like Gunter mentioned, a greater awareness that things have to change and that we need to put back the person at the center of the economy and not finance. In other words, finance should support the economy should support the common good, work for the common good, and the common good at the end should serve the person. So that has been our effort since 2010. We brought together about 1,000 leaders, mainly European, but also people from North America, Latin America, some people from Asia, mainly from business, but also from NGOs, also from the public sector. And the goal is to try to bring together testimonials of leaders who are serving their organization rather than serving themselves, and have actually put things into action rather than just talk. Just recently, so this applies to the traditional economy, but it also applies to the digital economy, since Carlos and OISTE have been there for some years now and have been very supportive. That, the digital economy obviously is very interesting, but as you know, technology is good, but you need to understand for what purpose. So the ethics, or the question of ethics, is also very important when you talk about new technologies such as artificial intelligence, neurosciences, machine learning, etc., which opens huge opportunities. But at the end, we need to ask the question, for what purpose? To give some practical examples and to make it short and to go back to the theme of illicit trade, what we've tried to promote is entrepreneurs that we try to showcase by giving them, a platform where they can have maybe contacts with investors, have contacts with other entrepreneurs, creating networks of entrepreneurs, because we feel, like Gunter mentioned, that entrepreneurs are the ones who are going to make a difference in terms of sustainability, such as Daniela is doing. Just to give a few examples, we talked about Race for Water. That has been renamed Blue Odyssey now, and actually this solar ship is actually showcasing technologies around the world, such as using plastic as a fuel, solar energy, hydrogen fabrication, etc., etc. And Gunter is very much involved in that activity now, since this whole this ship is actually in Japan. It was going to be showcased at the Olympic Games, which were due this year and now moved to next year. Another technology is Li-Fi, which is actually transferring data through light waves rather than through radio waves. And this is an anti-hacking technology, so it's safer, and it's a way to, and it has no interference with health. As we know, with Wi-Fi, you get bombarded with some of these very 5G antennas. It's not the best thing. So we've tried to promote the blue economy principle, which is to entrepreneurs and companies who are actually using what is available locally. And of course, if you use what is available locally, it's much more difficult to replace or to copy because there's these resources are local and can be traced more easily. So I can come back to other examples later, just not to make it too long. Carlos, thank you.
It's great. It's great. I think we have a very good base to continue the discussion, as many of those technologies, and I think I totally synchronize with you on that thinking, basically are technologies, and they are being used as an alternative to very dominant technologies that is putting the society at risk, as we all know now about our privacy and who owns the data, who owns our digital identities, and the risk of centralization and so on. So I think your work is essential to highlight this human-centric aspect of technology, which applies to everything. So if we go, just stay on the line of technology, I mean, one organization that has adopted technology in an amazing way is PMI, Philip Morris. And in particular, Alvise on the track and tracing technology that he uses for the tobacco industry, but also on the PMI impact effort to bring other stakeholders to continue fighting against illicit trade in a very concrete way, as obviously there's a very big multinational that needs to have this type of consciousness. And as I was asking to Gunter, are there any big multinational they are taking concrete actions, and PMI, from my point of view, is one of them in a very concrete way. So maybe, Alvise, you can give us views on that, and what is your expectation, what you have already achieved, and what is your expectation as we move forward?
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. Yeah, I know multinational companies, and I work for one, always seen a bit as the bad side of society, exploiting nature, exploiting environment, and so on. But I do think that some of them, and not most of them, and definitely I think Philip Morris, international company I work for, is trying to do the right thing. And why? I think the reason why it is very simple, because to be in tune with society is the right thing to do, because we are part of society. International companies are part of societies. The employees that work are employees that also have families, that also live in this world. So I think it is the right thing for international companies, like any company, to be in tune with what society wants and be part of building society and building the next generation, and the future together. And the second reason, because it also makes sense, good for our business. It makes a good business sense to, in this case, to fight illicit, because illicit is a legal economy, a legal trade. So it's basically taking away business from us. So the two things actually go very much in tune. And what we are doing, you mentioned, yes, we are embracing technology, because we are a strong believer that technology can help fight the illicit trade. We have deployed in all Europe a track and tracing system to track all our packs of cigarettes down to the point of sale, down to the shops. So each pack of cigarettes will have a unique code on the pack. And it's not like a barcode you have on other products, like a Coca-Cola bottle or a bottle of water, where you have a barcode, but each bottle of Coca-Cola that you find in Switzerland will have the same barcode. Here is each bottle of Coca-Cola, in this case cigarettes, have a specific code, so it can be tracked. And I think one of the paradox or interesting things of COVID right now, which has clearly a lot of negatives, but one thing it has done, it has brought to the attention of people about track and tracing. We have a lot of apps now that track your whereabouts. Now, of course, it has some consequence for privacy and so on, but it has brought up to the general public the track and tracing technology. And I do see this one having great potential in helping fighting illicit trade, as it is doing, for example, for us in the tobacco industry. I'll stop it there to give time to more debate. Of course, I have many other things to mention, but I just wanted to make this as an opening remark.
Very good. We are getting a lot of questions for a reaction of your interventions, which I will address later. But maybe now let's go to David, David Luna. Libby, you have been doing that for a long, long time. I follow you on social media, and I get always concerned about the announcements you make, because we can see that the problem is very serious, and it's getting more serious as we work forward. And it's unexpected, because we believe, or we had believed, that maybe with the digital economy and the fourth industrial revolution, we should be able to reduce part of that illicit trade, and also the interconnectiveness of illicit trade with other social causes. So where are we, and what is your recommendation as we move forward? What is the, also maybe following on Gunter concerns about the lack of cooperation and the lack of support that those initiatives, which we believe are essential, are getting? What is your views on that, please? You have to, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carlos, and thank you for your leadership in OISTE and the Zermatt Summit. Look, you just mentioned these issues are getting more serious and, more grave, and, how do we work, within the international community on really beginning to solve some of these transnational threats, right? Related to the illicit trade, I mean, it is a fact that the profits derived from various criminal activities is the lifeblood of kleptocrats, of criminals, of terrorists. And that we look at various evidence-based studies, the global illegal economy is just booming. The multi-dimensional harms of the illicit trades, it impacts all communities, not only from an economic, financial perspective, but really from a public health and safety. I mean, you mentioned COVID-19, that has provided an opportunity for the bad actors, for the criminals, especially online, to be selling counterfeit personal protection equipment, PPE, counterfeit medicines, sanitizers, disinfectants. If money can be made, the bad guys will be on top of that, making profits and really financing the insecurity and instability. But it's not only counterfeits, right? If we look at wildlife trafficking or environmental crime, illegal mining generates $48 billion, up to $48 billion a year for the bad guys. Fishing, similarly, tens of billions of dollars. Wildlife, I mentioned, up to 23 billion. Human trafficking and modern slavery, 150 billion. Illicit cigarettes, 40 to 50 billion. You add corruption and money laundering, and we're talking several $1 trillion a year. And that is very alarming. And again, under COVID, I think the illicit trade has been accelerated a lot because of the e-commerce and online marketplaces. So when we look at the issue of illicit trade, we must look at it from a multiplier of threats as well, because again, across borders, across economies, across communities, it is having a significant impact. So when Daniela talks about networks and partnerships, it is great. We must fight these networks with their own networks. And it's an issue of leadership, not only governments, but this whole society working with the private sector, working with NGOs to leverage and harness towards that collective action. I chair the OECD Business Anti-Illicit Trade Expert Group, working with the U.S. Council for International Business in ways that the private sector can leverage their expertise as well, including intelligence, information sharing, market intelligence, but also developing innovative technologies and solutions to work, again, across sectors and communities. So I'll leave it at there and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I think, Gunter, are you still there, right? I see you. Okay, before I think he's there. Yeah, hey.
Yeah.
So Gunter, just on the following on Christopher technologies that they had been presented during the Zermatt Summit, and particularly you have been very much involved in Li-Fi technology. I mean, two questions. One is, it is an amazing technology. We have been working on it, and it will solve so many problems. But why is not happening in terms of mass market? I mean, what this technology is not being expanded with all the benefits that that technology has and adopted, and why we are still pushing what we could eventually become dangerous technology. 5G is not only danger for your health, potentially, if this is being proved. It has not been proved yet, but it's also dangerous in terms of geopolitical impact, right? Because all the cybersecurity aspects, and we know them because we work on it, that this technology has. So using light for connecting countries and connecting enterprises sounds as a great idea. Maybe you can give us an update on that. It's not really related to illicit trade, but it's something that could change the backbone of the technology offering, which will solve illicit trade as an end game.
Well, Carlos, it is related to, I think, illicit activities, and it is directly related to the sustainability. I mean, let's just be very straightforward. The gas guzzler, the energy guzzler, l'énergivore of the world today is the expansion of the internet, is IoT. I mean, when we're going to have 1 million IoT devices interconnected with antennas in 1 square kilometer, you can only imagine how many servers you keep on buzzing behind you in order to make that operate. And if this is going to go, I mean, I just want to give you the very simple image. If you have 1 million IoTs talking to each other in 1 square kilometer, we should not neglect the fact that all the data is going out of that 1 square kilometer, crossing the globe to a multiple set of servers continents away, in order to come back to just not only take all the data, process all the data, but then also use quite often the data that has been collected for illegal purposes. And I'm not in the first place talking about drugs. I'm talking in the first place of data which is protected by consumer law. For example, medical data. I mean, there's an awful lot of medical data very freely processed through mobile phones, including the 5G, the 4G, and the 6G that is coming, that has no protection to the consumer. If a medical doctor prescribes on his iPad for a patient a prescription drug, and that prescription drug is immediately ordered by the medical doctor in the pharmacy locally, that can all be done by IoT, but it also means that the complete set of information is in the hands of third parties. And you don't know if that third party is a crook, or it is the Chinese government, or it is the American government, or it is the local, the local crook who is just trying to resell the information. We don't know. So there is no traceability today from consumer protection point of view, what is happening to my medical data. And we know it is being resold to insurance companies who just get it as bulk data and will never be accused of anything. But we know the system is not working right. So Li-Fi has the great opportunity that you can do your IoT very local, and that you do not need to have to go through a global network of IoT and a global server park in order to process the data. You could keep it local and thereby protect the consumer from critical information being shared. Now, why is the technology not being pushed? Particularly, it is a French technology. It was proven in France. It works extraordinarily well. Well, we sometimes need to ask ourselves the question, Carlos, why is an obvious business model not supplanting a business model that has a lot of questions? The issue is very simple, because today too many people are earning money, are getting commissions on data going over radio waves. I mean, Apple is the number one. Apple receives from the beginning a commission on the data transmitted over a radio wave, over a 5G or a 4G. And as a result, Apple is going to promote not only all the apps and all the IoT, but they're going to promote the 5G because they get a commission. Now, you know, there's always someone who's going to disrupt the game. And, you know, this is what many people have been waiting for. We forget that Wi-Fi existed 17 years before it got into a phone. And even everyone knew that Wi-Fi was an amazing breakthrough, but it was not applied because, well, the Qualcomms and the Ciscos were making too much money on the type of communication systems they had fixed into a firmware. Now, the Li-Fi game is finally getting torn apart. A couple of weeks ago, Oppo, the smartphone maker, the #2 smartphone maker of China, has announced that in 2021, they're launching the first Li-Fi phone. So breakthrough, bingo. But the announcement was very remarkable, and it didn't hit any newspapers in Europe. But those who know China just a little bit know that this was a very big message to America. The operating platform for Oppo, for Li-Fi, is nothing less but Android.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought Google was not allowed to operate in China. Oh, no. Probably they got the security systems in place that Chinese want to have in place. And of course, that security system with a foreign player is very easy to control through a Li-Fi. So China, through Oppo and Uber and Android, decided to join hands and join in launching the technology in Shanghai in April 2021. Immediately, Samsung announced that they have already over 1,000 patents on Li-Fi in their portfolio. Interesting. So here I am in Japan, and one of my first meetings, I'm sitting together with some of the chief strategists of NTT, the Japanese national telecommunications company, and they're saying, well, we have decided, incidentally, a couple of weeks after the Chinese Oppo had made their announcement, we have decided that we will work on a national Li-Fi network. NTT is doing that. Who are the partners? Well, they're always the same partners that we know. It's not going to be SoftBank, because NTT is not being very keen on SoftBank being successful. So what we're seeing, Carlos, is a reshuffling of the technology platforms. And I must commend Christopher for having been the visionary and having accepted that even 3 years before anyone was talking about it, that he put it on the platform at the Zermatt Summit. And I must commend you, Carlos, because you were one of the very first ones to engage in the discussion, because you immediately saw what it meant. It meant a change of business model. Now, when you have a change of business model, you have a chance, as our Chinese friends are doing with Google and Android, you have a chance to rewrite the rules of the game. And one of the writing of the rules of the game is transparency, of course, and 2, protection of the data. The Chinese don't want their data to leave the country through the existing phone networks. But when they get the guarantees and the technology allows them to insist on these guarantees, then we see a shift of power. In the bottom line is, it's a Samsung, Google, Oppo alliance against Apple.
Yeah.
And that's
You're totally right. You're totally right. And you are actually documenting a very concrete issue. And this is the same reason I connected immediately with Christoph, because it applies to me, applies to OISTE. You know, I try to do this neutral internet platform that will protect identities and privacy when I was in the UN for 15 years. And it was impossible to fight against the big companies. And the lobbies were so strong, and they were always trying to reduce the importance of the project. And that's why I created OISTE. I said, okay, I cannot do it there because I have not the tools. I'm going to create a company. But after 22 years in OISTE, despite the fact that we are on the NASDAQ and we have managed to do amazing things, the last 2 weeks ago, I acquired Arago. Arago is the largest AI company in Europe. And the reason I was able to acquire Arago is because the founder is actually acting on the same principle that you just described, Gunter. He doesn't want to be part of this machine that has been created between the Googles of the world, which now represent something like $20 trillion monopoly. And they are saying, no, we'd rather prefer to be smaller, but working on something that in the future will pay off, because we are putting the human at the center of gravity. And whatever we're going to do is to respect the human, respect the data the human produce, respect their identities, respect the independency, and let the fourth industrial revolution to evolve with that principle inserted on it, which was not the case of the third industrial revolution, where the human was only a piece of thing sitting in the peripheral of the entire revolution. So this is going to drive the business model, because at the end of the day, the business model of these companies is the acceptability from the consumers. The consumer has the power, not the company, right? And if the consumer realize, and they are starting to realize with Netflix, social dilemma, I mean, this is for young generation, they are like, wow, I didn't realize that was that bad, but it is that bad. It's even worse than what they're saying. So I think it is our responsibility as a combined thought leadership to set up a future for Daniela and my daughters and my sons and your sons that could have some hope in the future. And maybe connecting with that, Daniela, how you see all that? I know that you are a big user of technology, what you do. Do you ask yourself those concerns or those questions, or you just absorb what you already have and implement?
Oh, absolutely. No, I think that, my generation is much more aware of, first of all, greenwashing is something that it's so much more obvious nowadays when corporations are just throwing out information for the sake of their marketing and for their, profiles instead of because of what they're actually doing. I also think that, we are much more aware of how inundated we are with news day to day, and how everything is filtered, right? Filtered to serve your personality and to serve your needs, as opposed to you getting a diverse amount of information. So I definitely feel as if my generation, one, was really brought into this lifestyle and this mentality of information overload, and then we need to find the source of it all, because then you also have fake news, which of course affects everyone, and it affects our decisions, it affects our way of thinking, it affects how we connect with others. So I definitely think that, like Gunter was saying, it's so critical to find those innovative, disruptive technologies, invest in them, celebrate them, and then implement them as far and wide as we can. But it really is going to take these, this triad of partnerships, right? We absolutely need policies. We need governments to be allies. We need them to serve policies. We need to have the alternatives, right? Such as technology, such as innovations. And then we also need to have consumer demand. And once we have those three sectors aligned, that's when real change happens. And we saw that happen in the plastic space. Once we started getting bans on single-use plastic, especially around straws, then we started seeing more alternatives to plastics, right? And then we started seeing people become more aware of the plastic issue. So that was such an amazing case study of seeing a turtle that had a plastic straw stuck in its nose become the revolution as to why plastic should be removed from our environment and from our society. And it's a great case study to look at, because everything else followed afterwards, right? So yeah, I think that's something definitely interesting to talk about.
Absolutely. And one of the things that make those initiatives possible, and we can bring this to concrete grounds, is financing. I mean, without financing, many of those projects stays on the design board. So Alvise, you have developed a very interesting initiative with PMI Impact, which I am, by the way, one of the members, and I have been personally assisting to those meetings and get totally excited about young people, and they're coming from so many different sectors, trying to solve critical issues like a dark web, like illicit trade on all its form, like blockchain technology to decentralized ledger. Maybe can you walk us on the PMI Impact, and how do you engage with organizations such as Daniela in helping them to achieve their objectives?
Look, in 2015, we went through a process and internally Philip Morris to see what can we do more than we had done until 2015 in fighting illicit trade. And we came up with this concept of PMI Impact. It's a project which launched in 2016, which is pledging $100 million to finance projects exactly to fight illicit trade from projects coming from entrepreneurs, coming from the public sector, from the private sector, from universities, from basically from the whole society. And it is projects which are forefront of technology, but also research or more traditional financing, border control, and so on. But it is really trying to create a network of companies, of people like thinking to build the momentum and the awareness to fight against illicit trade. And when I talk illicit trade, we are financing projects in all sectors of illicit trade, not only the tobacco, which is the sector which Philip Morris is engaged, but any sector, being human trafficking, drugs, arms, wildlife. And why is that? Because we do believe that illicit trade should not be fought in silos, because they're all interconnected. So the smugglers, the organized crimes that are fighting, that are exploiting one good right now, which is a lot on the PPE, the personal protective equipment. They have the channels, and next day, if they find it advantageous to smuggle arms or tobacco, they will do it. They don't care. Anything they will make money, they will traffic there. So we launched this initiative. Now it's already in the fourth year. We have been financing so far 60 projects in around 30 countries around the world. And so far, we have reached half of the budget, so we're granted around $50 million. So we're halfway through, and there's still money to go. And next year we'll launch the third funding round. And I think it is an initiative that is really at the forefront in linking the public-private partnership for the better good of society.
Absolutely, and I think this is a great initiative that should be copied by many other multinationals, and they are solving the same problems. I imagine P&G, I imagine Novartis, I imagine Nestle. So there is a need to put the money where your mouth is, if we can vulgarize the expression, as talking is not enough, and the question on sustainability is getting every day more an issue. And again, if illicit trade is a major contributor, because when you produce counterfeited, and we know by experience, because we have been protecting products for many years with our technology, watches, hardware, plastic, whether they're sustainable or not, but putting certification on it. So David, there are so many bodies working on this. There's always OECD. I will be participating in a roundtable on illicit trade with economists in December. There's so much talk about it, but where do you see concrete actions? Where are the countries that are doing the right things? And which are the organizations that we can really say they are not just talking, they're just doing it?
Yeah, so, just building again on this concept of networks, right? And net centricity. I think if you look at the PMI impact and how they're trying to work with other industries, right? I mean, that's what it's about. It's leveraging, the capabilities, the expertise, because that's what it entails. As a former diplomat, building that international cooperation. To leverage, again, resources to do more together, right? Because these issues are hard enough, not only on the illicit trade, but, if you look at today's transnational threats, right? COVID-19 pandemics, the whole issue of climate change, terrorism, and now from an economic, trying to work on the economic recovery, right? It does take this, again, this coordinated, integrated approach to be able to solve some of these issues, these challenging issues. Some partners are doing some really good things. I think, the U.S. is doing, some really good things on the law enforcement side in many places of the world. I think the EU is as well, and other countries and other jurisdictions. I think, again, the important thing is to coordinate these efforts across borders, right? I mentioned earlier the importance of information sharing, so that they can, so the international community can disrupt and dismantle more of these illicit networks. If you look at New World networks, again, it's not only the track and trace for counterfeits, but also artificial intelligence, it's facial recognition, biometrics, it's drones, it's satellites, and some of today's hotspots, the U.S. government, has worked in the C4ISR, the command and control communications, reconnaissance, surveillance. We need to start, again, leveraging more of these capabilities, not only in the world of sustainability and the blue economy, right? Looking at smart cities, but how do we protect the communities against illicit markets and the bad actors who are roaming many of our neighborhoods, either selling drugs, engaging in human trafficking, engaging in the sale of endangered wildlife. We need to leverage a lot of these and get stuff done, right? So I think, again, harnessing these capabilities across borders will be very important. And that's something that we're trying to do with a new company that I'm working with, IREX AI, to really develop these new coordinated capabilities to attack the illicit trade. And again, that entails diplomacy as well. Working with the OECD, working with Interpol, with the World Customs Organization, and public-private partnerships. I think the private sector needs to lead, and we need to support great NGOs like the one that Daniela is leading these days in California.
Absolutely. On that line, on supporting NGOs, Christopher, where is your vision for the future and the Zermatt Summit to continue fostering those initiatives in a multi-stakeholder style as you do? And that I am very active in the World Economic Forum in Davos. I've been there many times. I go to the regional meeting, but when I visit your meeting, I was impacted by the human-centric approach as you bring spiritual leaders, you bring philosophers, you bring scientists, politicians to exchange ideas, which I think is the right way of coming with some kind of concrete consensus and action plan as you see the problem from so many different angles. So if we apply that formula to the current problems, I was reading the other day that COVID is going to be one of the major stop breaker for the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. That some of them, they were advancing pretty fast and well, like poverty alleviation. Actually, COVID is destroying all that. So that means that the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, and it was a huge focus on implementation. You have the support of Melinda Gates Foundation, very big players. It's actually, we are reaching the conclusion that they are not going to succeed at all, because the COVID situation is changing totally the landscape. The World Economic Forum is coming with the concept of the Great Reset, saying the society needs a reset. We need to start again. I personally don't like the word reset, because reset applies a bit like an old computer that needs to be reset in the same computer. I think we don't need to reset. We need to improve. We need to change. We need to leverage. What is your vision as the Zermatt Summit? How do you, because I think you're a great platform to discuss COVID, for instance. WESC is very much involved with several governments on COVID. I just came from Seychelles, helping the Seychelles government with zero COVID to bring tourists through applications that we have developed. And for them, this is critical. This is live. I mean, their entire employment is based on tourists. If they stop tourists arriving there, this country gets in poverty again. And that adds to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. In the last 6 months, we have added 30 million poor people. In the definitions of the UN, poor people is people with less than $2 per day. So imagine the quantity of millions that have been added in the last year. What is your vision, and how can you help the ecosystem to guide us towards some more factual and proactive events that can become conclusive rather than just talking?
Thank you, Carlos. I think the COVID has been a challenge for us, because actually we're organized a meeting with 200 people a year. It's not 2,000 people like in Davos. The idea was that people can connect, they can create relations, they can have face-to-face meetings. So obviously the COVID situation now has stopped us doing that. So we're looking at a hybrid system where we will still have hopefully connections between people, maybe smaller group, and also a virtual, let's say, a digital conference. But what is really interesting is maybe the experience, to answer your question maybe in a different way, is that what we think is important is to be able to show opportunities. When we say rewrite rules of the games, that means actually creating new jobs. So what we, for instance, this summer I was in I have a summer house in Italy, near Naples, in a well-known island, and they, like you pointed out, they live from tourism. Yes, of course, that tourism is disappearing, and so they need to create new jobs. And so what we had Gunter come over, and we found 15 different opportunities, you know, from recycling coffee waste to produce mushrooms, from producing locally energy, from cleaning, you know, creating a fish-free area around the island so that fish can reproduce, I think like Daniela is doing, and things like this. Some of them are very short-term and can be put into, how do you say, can be put into place with entrepreneurs with relatively small funding. Others will require more time. But I think that one way that we are trying to think for the future is to organize, let's say, local meetings in different places with entrepreneurs where we can encourage, transfer, and also learn from these entrepreneurs of opportunities based on the sustainable, let's say, blue economy principles, using local resources, using technology, digital economy, all these things. But moving from discussion to action, and that means being close to the ground, or let's say to the opportunities. We still want to continue in Zermatt to bring ideas and to have, let's say, a yearly overall meeting, but we think we need to decentralize somehow and organize things where the opportunities lie and where the need for new jobs exists. And this is not only in Africa, Asia, it's also in Europe, in so-called rich countries. We're going to see with the COVID now a lot of our economy being destroyed, and we need to rebuild, not reset, like you pointed out. You need to rebuild things with new ideas and with innovative new ideas. And so this is, I think, part of the answer.
Totally. I think you are in an amazing position to guide us all together towards a better future, you know, because the critical question now is do we going to have a better future? And Gunter, you are visionary. Where are we? Where is you're in Japan now, I believe. Some countries are doing this very well. Other countries are terribly mistaking the process, and this is because some of the models that we had before COVID do not work post-COVID or during COVID. Some countries, digital transformation was slowed, and governments didn't pay attention towards, and they are the number one suffering the consequences now because the country was not ready to handle a pandemic. And that includes even countries like Switzerland. Geneva is the hot spot of Europe. Actually, we're the number one city. And who will thought about that? I mean, we thought that Geneva was so efficient, and we had so many international organizations here. WHO is here, so we should learn from it. But no, we are actually the worst canton city in Europe. So what is your view, Gunter? Who is doing right? Who is doing wrong? And why is not international cooperation is not being solidified behind this, what is a global issue? It's a global problem. It's not a problem of one country. It has no barriers, has no frontiers.
Let me just share two specific experiences. As you know, I'm close to the Italian government, and we made an analysis of what did COVID do for the mafia. And no one likes to talk about it, and it doesn't hit the media, but I can tell you guys that the mafia has strengthened like never ever before since the Second World War, period. We see a fourth big family moving in very strongly, because when you do a confinement strategy based on tests which were never made to lock down a country, these tests were made for laboratories to identify snippets of viruses, not at all to decide to lock down a country. But if you then do decide to lock down a country and you create a whole set of impediments like night clocks and curfews, well, who do you think is going to go around it? The ones who should not be there at all in the first place. And so in Italy, We have, as Member of Parliament, one of the greatest experts with an alarming report of how confinement actually strengthens illegal trade and underground organizations. The second country that I have first-hand experience is Colombia. When Colombia decided to stop transport over the weekend from Thursday to Monday, basically they handed over the farmers to the mafia. Because if the farmer has done his harvest and the harvest cannot be delivered to Bogota, to whom do you turn? Well, you better turn over to someone who is going to get it to the market, because if it doesn't get to the market by Tuesday, it's rotten. And that means you lose your harvest. So what we have not very well understood is that one of the, I hope, unintended consequences of confinement is a dramatic strengthening of the mafia. And this is, you name it very gently, illicit trade. But, you know, when you are monitoring people to a distance of 1.5 meters and you're monitoring transport from one region to another, I mean, Argentina is the third case. You need permits to go from province to province. So who gets your goods from province to province when your truck driver can't do it? Well, we know who you turn to. So we have actually, with the COVID situation, have strengthened and have actually created a complete new platform for illicit trade and illicit activities. But we are to blame because we have been putting up rules and regulations with very heavy fines. In Colombia, the fines go up to 2 salaries, 2 monthly salaries. That means what do? Do you risk the 2 salaries and lose them, or you risk you know, 1/3 of your salaries and you go to an illicit organization and they take care of it? And so I think we have forgotten that when we put in rules that are outrageously encroaching on the freedom of movement of people and the movement of goods, that illicit organizations will get in between. Let's not forget that in 1776, that the year that The Wealth of Nations was written by Adam Smith, was the year that the British Parliament imposed 100% tax on Swiss watches coming into the United Kingdom, 100%. So what did the Swiss do? Well, the Swiss, they smuggled it into the UK. It's very simple. They smuggled them in, and that was the basis of the insurance industry, because they were very quickly calculating that 1 out of the 10 smugglers was caught. So they just collected 10% of each watch sold, created a little insurance company, and if you got caught, you got reimbursed anyway. We have to realize that whenever there is an excessive action by government, and we are definitely excessively intervening in the private lives, in the transport and distribution, you are creating a platform for illicit trade to flourish beyond imagination.
Hey, Carlos, can I make a quick
Sure.
point?
And David, by the way, on that comment you're going to make, I would like also to, if you can describe a bit the blockchain aspect of it, because $1 billion was just confiscated a few days ago from the dark web by American authorities, and this was a wallet that was used by illicit trade people. So maybe also on illicit trade, please go ahead.
Yeah, just, you know, I think Gunter made a very great point, frankly, in the illicit dynamic, not only, you know, vis-a-vis the mafia in Italy, but if you look at the diversification of organized crime, including the Mexican cartels in Mexico, as they're going into mining, as you're going into farming and fishing, you know, in partnership with the Chinese syndicates, you know, this diversification is imperiling the green and the blue economy, the sustainable development goals, and the economic recovery. And this is true in the tri-border with Hezbollah, into the illicit cigarettes, into illicit finance, Boko Haram, El Shabaab, endangered wildlife, the charcoal trade. the diversification is just creating more insecurity and instability. On the blockchain issue, well, Carlos, I think you're one of the experts in this regard. I think blockchain does provide the ability, as we begin to perfect, the technologies on this, not only vis-a-vis counterfeits, but on banking, for example, and really developing these unique digital IDs so that we can, identify and monitor across supply chains, licit and illicit goods, including money. And this is not so much in the dark web, but we can work with the banking community to have more confidence in blockchain. I think we can do good to follow good money, but also the dirty money and illicit financial flows. Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you very much. Totally agree. One of the issues which are coming basically, and this is a very serious concern in line with what Gunter just said now, is that a vaccine seems to be in the horizon, and 6 billion people will potentially be vaccinated. Imagine the logistic nightmare of that, especially the temperature issue. Those vaccine has to be stored in a very low temperature. And imagine the illicit trade and an operation like that will create. Actually, I'm working with a company in Germany with the name Digit, the digital diagnostic, which is a 15-minute test that has been tested in Germany. And they, just on a very small ecosystem, the complexity of deploying that infrastructure is mind-boggling. So when you will multiply that, and this is Germany, a very highly industrialized country, if you multiply that by developing countries, the potentiality of this effort to vaccinate the world, to get in the hands of the wrong people and abuse the populations with counterfeited vaccines, counterfeited products, counterfeiting identities, faking identity. I was in Seychelles, and I asked the minister, are you safe? And the minister said, yeah. We have controlled the airports. We have put a very sophisticated app that forces you to scan your COVID certificate. All that is being done, and they are very efficient with that. But he said, but our problem is somebody illicitly coming to the country through one of the connections in another African country, infected with actually the objective to infect Seychelles, because that will be a way to stop their success in tourists. So this is going to be becoming like a bioweapon, against the interests of another country. So that complexity is mind-boggling, and without the right international cooperation, it's very difficult. But my question, and Alvise, you have been doing. I mean, you have billions of products out there, right? And you have been tracing that. Is that track and trace technology something that could be used or applied to the global deployment of vaccines that we're going to have in the next years?
I would say in some cases, yes, but the problem of every track and tracing system is as good as what you track, and therefore the illicit vaccine are not going to be tracked, and therefore that's where it a bit breaks down. So you have to have some systems, and they are where your code you put on your product cannot be counterfeited. I think that's the trick. That's one. Second is that. To put up a track and tracing system it is as good as what you, as I mentioned, as you track. So what does that mean is that you can put a code on your vaccine, but you need to track it throughout the chain, the supply chain, and there where the complexity starts. Because for our producers like us in tobacco, to put the code on the pack and to track it to our first client, it is the easier part. The supply chain needs to be tracked. And there you need to have all the companies in the supply chain having the equipment, knowing the process. You need to have a central data bank where the information goes to. So that is more the complexity in tracking the products throughout the supply chain. So it can be done, but you don't put up a track and tracing system overnight.
Totally. And maybe Daniela, on supply chain, you are involved in supply chain, and also, I would like, there's a question for you from the audience that says, what will be the next move I need to do to change our vision about plastic and the protection of the oceans? We already have solution to replace plastic, but nothing is really done at a worldwide scale. Maybe you can answer that question as well, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start answering that question, which will bring me into talking about the biggest challenges that ocean technology startups are facing, which is relevant to this conversation and to the plastic problem. So when you look at the spectrum of ocean technology, especially given that it's such a nascent industry, on one end, you have the ideation phase, right? You have people that have very early stage ideas, very grassroots projects, and then you move into the seed stage. There are some companies that might have already have a product in place, have a business plan in place, and those are the companies that we're currently working with, and they're going through our accelerator program, where we give them access to mentorship, access to funding, access to resources, and access to exposure to what they're working on. And then you go into Series A, companies that already have proven their model, are raising some funding, and then you go into Series B, C, and hopefully the exit. And so when you look at the ocean technology space, we have tremendous financing gaps. We have a lot of funding going into very seed, very early stage companies, but then they can't raise that next set of capital to get them past Series A and past the Series B and getting them into scalability and expansion. And so although we have all these amazing new products, we have alternatives to plastic by seaweed, we have avocado seeds that are being used for that, we have shrimp shells that are being used to replace styrofoam. We have the technology, it exists, but we don't have the capital that is being injected into the space to make that growth happen. So financials is definitely one key factor that is holding us back in making sure that we can scale. The second area of it as well is we don't have enough pilot projects happening. So when you think about some of these technologies, for example, a company that is working on tidal energy, they need to put their technology in some type of coastal area, but governments have such rigid permits and they're so expensive to bypass that oftentimes these companies have to leave their region where they're from and go into a whole different country and an island nation to trial their technology. So how can we make pilot testing a little bit more accessible to these entrepreneurs? And then the third aspect of it is education. We ultimately have to educate the users of these technologies for them to be early adopters. And when you think about the plastic problem, it's become easier because people are more mindful of how they're interacting with plastic, their day-to-day, they're using more reusables. But when you're talking about technology such as sustainable fishing, it's so hard to educate fishermen on how to change their habits, on how to educate, their parents that they have, been passed down this trade, for the past, millennial. And it's really about that one-to-one education and conversation you have to have on the ground. So, that's the spectrum of challenges we're facing in the ocean technology entrepreneurship side. And it's so important to tackle the capital side of it, the pilot project side of it, and also the education at the grassroots level. And then to give you two examples of some companies that are working on this traceability question that you asked, Carlos, one of our companies that we just supported through our program is called Tremoto. And what Tremoto is doing is they're building a platform so that people can see which companies are selling and buying seafood ethically, right? And so when you think about it, it's like a LinkedIn or a Yelp for seafood. So anyone can go in there and see who are the buyers of seafood, who are the sellers, and they're certifying them to say, this seafood company is actually tracing, and they can see where the fish is coming from. They can see whether they've been tracked. They can see if they have any partnerships with local governments to make sure that actually happens. And what's so exciting about that is that the consumer can go in there and track the fish that they're buying from the grocery store all the way to a major corporation like a Walmart, or any of these big corporates that buy fish can go in there. And if consumers are seeing that they're buying from illegally sourced fish, we can hold them accountable. So that's one example of the supply chain, right? How can we make sure that we have the transparency to be able to monitor these companies from the comfort of our homes? So that's one example of a company. Another company I'll briefly touch upon is called OceanWorks. And OceanWorks is a global ocean marketplace. So as many of you have seen, there's a lot more demand now for recyclable plastics, right? To make sunglasses, to make surfboards, to make chairs, bicycles, you name it. But oftentimes the people that want to make these new products, because they're being sold left and right, they don't know where to source the plastic from. And the biggest problem that we have is that some of these are labeling them as resource plastic when they're really not. They're virgin plastics. So we need to make sure that we can find the identifiers to see where exactly is each piece of plastic being picked up from, where is it being sourced from, and how is it being utilized at the end of the spectrum. And so this company, OceanWorks, is the liaison between the folks wanting to find these products and the people like literally going out there and picking up the plastic from beaches, from from different areas, and preventing it from entering the ocean space. So I think those two examples are pretty amazing to see how these startups have the solutions, they have the passion, they have the energy. We just need to make sure that we can help them get to scale and help them access regions at different markets that they otherwise wouldn't be able to to be in.
Thank you very much, Daniela. It's really encouraging to see so much energy and at the same time concrete results in the work you guys are doing. Gunter, on the circular economy, maybe this is the time, because local production, it's being now recommended. People are moving away from those very big e-commerce sites. A lot of the products are illicit. E-commerce platform, Amazon and others are not yet putting any technology there that will reassure me that the product is actually genuine and it's not a counterfeited product. And some people are just saying, what about buying local? What about just giving priority to local consumers? I want to test, I want to see where the product is manufactured. I want to talk to the person that is manufacturing. So this is, I would say, a decentralization of this huge industry that was created, of centralizing all the food and products, consumer products, into those huge platforms. Is that your view? That you think that this is going to continue? And COVID obviously is accelerating that process due to proximity aspect of commerce. And that might end up by being an accelerator to that circular economy that you have been always promoting, right? Because you want to bring back things to where they started, recycling.
Well, Carlos, and to pick up on some of the previous observations also from Daniela, let's just realize that about 35% of all the plastic bags which are labeled biodegradable in Italy are not at all degradable. The mafia just put a stamp on there. I mean, it goes down all the way to the level of just a biodegradable bag. It's quite amazing how we have not been able to see through the system. And of course, one of the best ways to see through the system is to create what we call the local clusters. As some of you may know, I'm the chairman of the largest bioplastics company of Europe. I'm the chairman of Novamonde, and we're a vertically integrated company. That means we work with the farmers. So Daniela, we work directly with the farmers, and we transform directly from the farms in the region into the core ingredients to make the bioplastics within Italy. We got 5 factories now in Italy. We got 2 research centers in Italy. And the only way to overcome the situation of the illicit trade is indeed to create a value chain that is local. But it cannot be modeled along the traditional, the cheapest is the one that will win. Because if you are the cheapest, I mean, I just want to put it very bluntly, particularly to David. David, when the economic model is you are competing globally on being the cheapest, then you have to cheat. There's no other way. How am I going to beat the Bangladeshis, the Chinese, and the Brazilians when I'm not cheating in taxes, I'm not cheating on my raw materials, I'm not cheating on my laborers, and I'm cheating on the environment? I mean, we cannot uphold a solid social tissue. We cannot regenerate our ecosystems and then have to be forced to compete on price. So in Italy, basically our company today has about 60% of the market of bioplastics. Why? because we're totally transparent. I mean, everyone knows the prices we pay for the vegetable oils to the Italian farmers, the prices we pay for the sugar beets. We make monomers out of sugar beets and out of thistle oils. We transform them into polymers, and then the polymers are transformed into higher value-added products, and we share a great value of that with the farmers. And when you have the sharing plus the transparency, then you stamp out illicit activities. You stamp them out. Why? Because everyone in the community is gaining. And this is where we have to go away from the traditional transactional deal, I buy, you sell, to a real system whereby you're creating not just the high efficiency by being the lowest in price and the greatest economy of scale, but you're creating resilience in the community. You're creating the common good. And that comes back to what Christopher is, of course, also insisting on from the beginning that I've met him, that is, we need to have the common good at the core of so many of our activities. And resilience is clearly including not subjecting yourself to illicit trade. I mean, that is part of the resilience of you as a community, because we know the moment that the community gives up that resilience to illicit activities, well, then your next generation is going to be part of whoever we know that is going to be part of. So my view is very clear. Transparency is one, but the second one is sharing. And then this is where some people insist on the sharing economy. It's not enough to merely close the loop and make certain there is no waste. That's not good enough. So our strategy in Italy has worked very well. And by the way, we have in this COVID year, I mean, you mentioned the Seychelles. Well, our company with 853 employees, guess what? We have not one COVID case in Italy, not one. And why? Because if you take your precautions and you do it in a transparent way, and when risks are occurred, then you just take action. And I think this is very important. We have this year, thanks to the situation with the COVID, quote unquote, because it's not really a thank you, that our productivity has increased because we had to, due to social distancing, we had to shift from 1 8-hour work shift to 2 6-hour work shift. And we increased our productivity. But we also were able to rethink how we are, amongst others, doing all our tests and labeling. But here is my final comment. Daniela, did you know that no chemical engineer in the world is taught at university how to design a polymer that degrades in the sun, in the soil, and in the sea? Because it's very clear that if you have a biodegradable plastic that is degrading in the soil thanks to the microorganisms in the soil, those microorganisms don't exist in the sea. And to me, it is quite shocking that the European Union has not even today defined what is biodegradation in the sea. I mean, Carlos, if the government is not setting standards, then it's very easy for, the illicit trade to put on the wrong stamp because we have nothing to measure against. And this is perhaps the most important thing that governments have to do, is not rule social distancing by the meter and not stopping transportation from one province to the other. They have to set norms and a framework within which we can operate, because we need to be able to operate. But if our education system, as was mentioned before, doesn't even teach chemical engineers how to make a molecule that degrades in the sun, the sea, and the soil, then we're going to have plastic waste in our oceans for decades to come.
Fully agree. So David, one question to you was about the unfair competition on price. Any comments there?
Yeah, well, I mean, conceptually, I kind of agree with Gunter, but respectfully, in another manner, I wouldn't necessarily call it cheating, right? It's an issue of legality. It's an issue of price arbitrage. It's an issue of complicity of corrupt officials in a lot of jurisdiction, which, again, if they're not enforcing the law, yeah, it's illegal, it's a crime, but it's a corruption issue, right? So if you look at free trade zones, whether it's in Dubai or Cologne, a lot of the illicit activity that we perceive is actually legal in some of those zones, right? I agree with Gunter, there needs to be more transparency and more enforcement. But a lot of contraband or a lot of illicit goods, the bad guys smuggle these things from one jurisdiction to another because they can make a difference, a huge profit, based on that price of that good, from one country to another, from one locality to another. So conceptually, good point. I just, cheating, again, I would use the word more exploitation or criminality and complicity as well.
Thank you very much. One question from the panel for you, Alvise, is the role of the farmers. They say 80% of the farmers around the world grow fake tobacco, woku tobacco. How can that be reduced, basically? And is that really the problem? Can they be trained? Can they be converted into authenticated sources of tobacco? Where is the problem with the farm? Is there a problem, basically?
That's a good question. And just let me also come back to your previous question you had, Carlos, on can track and trace help to secure the vaccine? I think technology can help. I think track and tracing, as I mentioned, can be a bit cumbersome to introduce, but I think the digital world can help. And a code on the vaccine, which the producer can easily apply, if that code is digitally secured, then consumers or the pharmacy or the doctors can check if that product is a counterfeit product or not. I think that one is an easier way where in a quick fix or quicker implementing and having the digital and the technology will help solve an issue, which is definitely going to be there when the vaccines are coming out. Tobacco, I think that the tobacco can be traced. It is more complex simply because there's so many small farmers producing tobacco. So what we do as a company to secure that our tobacco is purchased in farms where there's no child labor and so on. We have programs with our providers which are implemented with the farmers, a bit in the direction which Gunter Pauli was mentioning, that you need to treat your supply chain in a fair way. So you need to make them part of your success, and you need to elevate them to be more than just your suppliers. And as Gunter Pauli mentioned, not just a transactional action. So what we do is, for example, with our suppliers of tobacco is to avoid the child labor, to reduce the child labor, is to have programs to send the kids to school, to help the farmer increase their productivity. So then he has more production and has a bit more money that he does not have to have his kids working on his farm. So I think it's more in that direction that we as a company are working with the farmers.
Thank you very much. We are reaching the time. We say we will stay 1 hour and a half, 90 minutes. So we have a few minutes left, and I would just maybe as a closing remarks, get your individual views on really just coming into some kind of concrete recommendations on what will be the immediate action plans that we can put together in place, maybe through the work of the Zermatt Summit, as I believe is a great vehicle to address these to larger ecosystem and communities, and basically get more support. As I mentioned at the beginning, we signed this anti-illicit trade declaration in Zermatt in 2019, and is available on the Zermatt website and OISTE website. And the idea is to get more support. I mean, this is obviously just an endeavor on where we want to get more and more multi-state shareholders that they will come to work with us, and also to have some kind of forum of discussions where we can bring other multinationals and governments like we have done in the past. So maybe some final remark and some recommendation both to us and to Christopher on how we can improve even further this initiative. Maybe David, we'll start with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, just some sobering facts. Look, the size of the global economy is 1/7 of GDP. Counterfeits, PPE, and fake medicines are killing more and more, especially across the developing world during COVID. Criminals continue to gravitate to high reward, low risk activities. Illicit trade is booming across online marketplaces. Illicit trade is easy money for terrorists and bad actors, and corruption is getting worse. I mentioned Dubai. I wanted to clarify that it's Jebel Ali, the free trade zone, that is really creating some problems there. But at the end of the day, it is that collection actions that helps to strengthen our collective security. I think we can leverage more partnerships, we can leverage more technologies, and we must support good partners like Daniela and other NGOs who are doing great work.
Very good. Sounds great. Gunter, some closing remarks?
Well, first of all, thank you for organizing this, Carlos. You're always leading on this topic, and it's not always a favorite topic. I mean, I think one of the great things that I'm recommending to you and to Christopher, even when the topics are not the pleasant ones, and even when the topics are not the popular ones, please continue on putting them on the agenda and dig in deep and dig in your heels, because there will be a pushover and some people wouldn't like it to be discussed. So that's the first one. The second one is that we need to have, I would say, a few more detailed country cases. I think it is always very interesting. We talk about multinationals, but very often country cases are very important. And I'm quite happy to put you in touch with the members of parliament in Italy who are literally risking their life for having disclosed very bluntly how confinement is making illicit organizations so much stronger. I forgot to mention that in Colombia, it's calculated that 30% of the food trade has turned illicit because of confinement measures. And I think this is something where we need to be very direct, and their multinationals can be very helpful because they do have the ear of governments. If governments are doing these restrictions to the point that the mafia controls the trucks again, I thought we just got them out of the trucking and all of a sudden, because we impose those regulations, we're just handing it over back to the illicit groups. And I think this is very important. The country studies and pointing out to how very blatant, ignorant actions have given sectors back on a silver plate to the illicit movements and organizations that we thought we had all long time under control. And I think this is a very important one. Just put the finger in it and make it known. And Christopher, the great advantage that you have with the Zermatt Summit is that we know there is no second agenda. I mean, you don't have a second agenda. You have the common good as the core, at the core and the priority. And that gives confidence to people to actually raise those quote unquote unpleasant issues under your wings. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you very much, Gunter. Totally in agreement. You are highlighting the key issues, and I think Christopher has an amazing role and has done an amazing job already. So maybe Daniela, you're the future, and we are here to help your generation to do it right. And we are so concerned about the difficulties that your generation is facing as you are entering into a very complex world. What is your views on what else we can do to help that generation?
Thank you, Carlos. And just to echo Gunter's remarks, it's been wonderful to have this dialogue and exactly around topics that are uncomfortable but necessary to talk about. So thank you both for putting this together. I would say that one of the areas that where there isn't a lot of interest and energy around is holding investors accountable. Because at the end of the day, the folks that are funding these enterprises, these corporations, should also be held accountable to who they're funding, and should also be educated as to where their money is going. So I would encourage you to maybe develop some type of pledge for investors, or give them some type of blueprint that they can ask those hard questions to the companies they're investing in, to see whether the companies they're investing in are complicit in this illicit trade industry, and for them to be able to source that information from them before funneling more money into their business. So I do think that, capital talks, as we all know, and if we can get more investors to be knowledgeable and to either stop funding these companies and then, put their money in impact investments in ocean technology, I think that's where the future really lies. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. But again, thank you for this.
Thank you very much, Daniela. Thank you very much. Alvise, final remarks.
Quickly, because we're getting to the end, first of all, thank you, Carlos, for organizing these webinars. I think I personally enjoy them a lot. I like also the format, which is engaging. Look, I think we said a lot. Is there a silver bullet? No. I do think that it is what it boils down to. It's about people. It's about people that want to change. They want to do the right thing. They want to do the right thing for society, for themselves, for their friends, for their families, and for the bigger good. So it is people. I think people, at the end of the day, will make the difference. And if I could add, then also governments, the politics, there has to be change comes from the top. So people and politics need to be driving this. Technology can follow. The technology is there. But if there's not the will of the people to do it, we're going to go nowhere.
Totally. And now, Christopher, I think Gunter just said exactly what I think is the reason why I joined the Zermatt Summit is that you don't have a second agenda. And I have been seeing so many of those second agendas in so many other places that it gets discouraging to even participate in those events. So I think while we maintain that level of integrity and that level of trust, which is basically what the society needs, we are in a trust deficit society. Nobody trusts anyone. I think we can transform that into a major dialogue focus location, whether we do virtually, we do by holograms. By the way, the next event is going to be by holograms. So there's a world first. We're going to do a first, what we call not a webinar, but it's going to be a holograminar, combining basically a meeting like the one we are doing, but with physical presence of people. That will be a great event, and OISTE is organizing. But I think you, as I say, you are in an amazing position, and we're here to help you. We are here to thank you for being with us so many years. And just your final remarks for us to close this great webinar today.
Thank you to Carlos for this organizing this webinar. Thanks for the collaboration over the years. This will stay on the agenda, even if it's not comfortable, like Daniela said. It's important. The second point, I think, was this idea of having a pledge for investors. This seems to be this seems to be a good idea. In other words, the people who invest are not always aware of basically what the consequence of their investments. So we need to think maybe we can add a part of what we have signed in 2019 more directed to the investors, or to have some other form of. But anyway, we continue our collaboration with you, with OISTE, with also, I hope, with PMI, and we will keep this on the agenda. And we hope to have Daniela participate in the next summit, because we need young entrepreneurs who are really committed and are basically in the action. I think this is very inspiring for all of us. So thank you very much to David also for participating, and to Gunter, because it's now a night for you, Gunter. It's 1 o'clock in the morning or something, right? In Japan.
No worries, Christopher. We're happy to serve.
Thank you to all again.
So David, Alvise, Daniela, Christopher, and Gunter, thank you very much,
Thank
and
you.
God bless, and see you
God bless.
soon. All the
God
best, guys.
Bye.
Thank you
Stay
very
safe.
much.
Thank you. Be safe. Be well.